Hello. Let's talk about history, Egyptian history specifically, and Netflix. Now, a few months ago, there was a TV show in which Anne Boleyn was depicted as a black woman, and that caused some raised eyebrows and tuts of annoyance from people in Britain. But obviously, we're not doing it right. In Egypt, they're far more proactive. So here we have, let's see, Control Tab. Let's see if this works. There we are. An Egyptian lawyer who, having discovered that Netflix is going to do a docudrama, by docudrama, that means it's supposed to be reflecting historical events, so that it's supposed to be historically accurate. They have this lady here playing Queen Cleopatra. Now, there is no way that Cleopatra looked like that woman, either in facial features or skin colour, simply because Cleopatra the seventh, Philoprator, I think, Cleopatra anyway, was Greek. She was the daughter of a Greek dynasty that had been set in place by comrades in arms of Alexander, the great general. And because the ruling class of Egypt was Greek, so was Cleopatra. But there is more than one reason for Cleopatra not looking like a black woman. And it was this. Hang on, next one. And yeah, right, here we are. This is what I was talking about. You see, this is Africa, as you will no doubt know. You may notice something about Africa. It's divided in two. There's a fertile area up here. This is a very crude map because these areas here, there are many places here which are quite green, and it's just shown as desert, which isn't true. And again, there's quite a bit of greenery up here as well. However, basically this line here, including this line across Saudi Arabia, was impassable desert. It was just impossible for the sub-Saharan Africans to migrate northwards. It was in the pre-mass communications times, it was much easier to get a boat from these areas here and go to this part of Africa than it was for anyone here to get to that part of Africa. And it shows in the people. I'm not just talking, well, here, let's see what I have next on the... by the way, this bit, Saudi Arabia, I just want to tell you about this, because I don't know what the locals call this part of the Sahara Desert, but this part of Saudi Arabia here, this bit in the middle, is called the Hadramaut. And Hadramaut means death has come. That's what the Arabic means, literally. People usually translate it as the empty quarter. Hadramaut means death, the place of death, Death Valley or whatever. And, it was something you avoided. And people from this part of Africa would have just stopped here. So apart from some traffic up and down the Nile and maybe some coastal migration, most of the people in North Africa will have come from these areas in prehistoric times, from Spain. I mean, it's hardly you can see Africa. You can see Morocco from Gibraltar. There must have been many occasions when Stone Age migrants from this area just went across to see if the fields really were greener on the other side. And of course there would have been some migration from this direction as well. Next to no migration from this area. Right, let's just go on to the next bit. Let's see. Next tab. This is Queen Cleopatra. That's a coin with her name on it. And this is a Roman, I think this is a Roman statue of her, but it's a copy. Apparently she had a quite a large hooked nose, which is rather Greek and terribly, terribly not African. There's very little doubt that Cleopatra was anything other than a Greek, and a Greek physical type. But the people who went to North Africa would have looked very little different. The Berbers, for instance, are what is left of the original people of that area before the Arabs invaded. You see, what's changed in history, and this is why I'm talking about history, that people don't have an appreciation of. The Arabs invaded the area about 1500 years or 1400 years ago. And not only are the Arabs darker skinned, but as the sort of people who took African slaves off the east coast of Africa, they themselves had an admixture of sub-Saharan African blood, which they brought into the countries that they invaded. And then they carried on trading slaves, African slaves, into the areas they had invaded. So the ethnic mix of North Africa has changed quite dramatically in the 1,000 or so years that they've been, sort of in the 1400 years that they've been under Arab influence. And you can see what's left of the indigenous people of North Africa in the Berbers. They survive in the more remote areas where the Arabs didn't get at them. So we have these sorts of people in the Berbers in North Africa. There we are. Now, you see this fellow here? I know somebody from Lithuania who looks like that. And there's this one. This young woman here. She's a Berber. And this old lady here and her, hoping it's her grandson. You can see that these are European people, and they all live in this area. Where is Africa again? They all live in this area here. That's where the Berbers ended up, secreting themselves. The Atlas Mountains, these areas. So you can see that there's absolutely no chance of Cleopatra looking like anything but a Greek. I'm Granniopteryx on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. All the links are in the description. I am also on Twitter and Gab, where I let you know when I've uploaded a new video. Links in the description. You can contribute to my channel financially. Links in the description. But if you don't fancy going to any of the links in the description, the one thing you can do to help my channel is like this video. Click that like button, share the video and subscribe to my channel. Right, back to Africa. So this lawyer in Egypt has decided to do something about it, which I think is admirable. And it may give an example to people in Britain to start suing companies who depict Anne Boleyn as black. Because it's not funny and it's not historical. Tom Sowell made a comment once that the maths book his granddaughter had, it wasn't a maths book, it was a book about famous mathematicians, and he said it's hard to believe that there was one single white mathematician in the entire Western world, the way that book had been set up. So it's fine to give ethnic minorities their view. I agree with that. But it isn't fine to pretend otherwise. Now, I'm just going to tack on to that a little article here, because Rishi Sunak has rejected a call to apologise and pay reparations. And this call came for slavery. This call came from a Labour MP, Belle Ribeiro Addy. She was born in 1985, is a British Labour Party politician, what else, and represents Streatham. She was born and raised in Streatham and grew up in a working class family on a council estate on Brixton Hill. She is of Ghanaian descent. Now, this lady here, of Ghanaian descent, was brought up on a council estate, which means that the state was subsidising the rent that her parents were paying. Which means she was getting stuff from the state. And it looks like she is a solid citizen, a very solid citizen. And as an MP, she might be doing good work among her constituents, so contributing to society. But she has had what amounts to reparations anyway, hasn't she? Anyone who has lived in any way off the state has had reparations, black or not. They've been given money by the state. They have been given money, rather, by taxpayers of the state. And I consider her insistence that the British people should abase themselves, apologise and then turn money over to their black citizens is, well, it's not only insulting to the people who have contributed to her present state in in British society, but also it's a complete, again, ignorance of history. All the slaves that the British, the Europeans generally, took from Africa, they were all obtained from African slave traders and sometimes Arab slave traders. The white men couldn't go into the interior. They just got local diseases and died. They just didn't dare. And of course, the wild animals with which they were not familiar, they couldn't manage those either. So they got their merchandise from Africans and Arabs. If she wants to start asking for reparations, she should go to Nigeria. I mean, all those Nigerian princes have so much money. I'm sure they could afford to give reparations to the black people who are living in Britain right now, who may have once come from somewhere around that area. Or maybe even Saudi Arabia, because there are plenty of very rich Arabs whose roots go back, or indeed the Ottoman Empire. Great slave traders, those. And she comes and starts complaining to Britain, which has paid reparations already in stopping the international slave trade altogether. No one else in history ever did that. No other country in history ever even considered doing that, never mind did it. And instead of praising the country that's given her the status she has, she's asking for more, which I consider, well, hideously ungrateful, but also showing a complete ignorance of history, which brings me back to, to this. All right, well, yeah, that's it. I just thought I'd mention that. Right, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com. And whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.